Well, Boyd Coddington began moonlighting with hot rods when he was just 13. His fascination with car customization grew, and eventually he opened up his own design shop. And today he runs a company with 70 employees. His creations can be seen weekly.
Boyd Coddington built an empire and then watched it slip away. At one point, he was the most recognizable name in custom car building, with television fame, industry influence, and some of the most talented builders in America working under him. But as the years went on, the success started moving elsewhere, and many of the people who helped build Boyd's reputation were suddenly building legacies of their own. So, what caused the downfall of one of hot rodding's biggest legends? And why did so many former allies end up becoming his biggest rivals? Join us as we find out what happened to Boyd Coddington from American Hot Rod. Shotgun trade. Rupert, Idaho, 1956. At just 12 years old, Boyd Coddington gives up his shotgun for a car. It won't be his last unconventional deal. In rural Idaho in the 1950s, a shotgun wasn't just a possession. It was the thing that said you were somebody worth listening to. It was probably the most valuable thing Boyd Coddington owned, and he handed it over, without a second thought, for a car he couldn't legally drive for 4 more years. He spent his early years reading every car and hot rod magazine he could get his hands on. At 13, he had a 1931 Chevrolet truck. By the time he finished machinist trade school and completed his 3-year apprenticeship, he had learned the language of tolerances, where a difference of a few thousandths of an inch separates acceptable from perfect. That language became the only one he ever really spoke. In 1968, he moved to Southern California because that was where the cars were. But the money wasn't there yet, so Boyd worked 2 lives at once. By day, he built hot rods. By night, he worked the graveyard shift as a maintenance machinist at Disneyland, keeping the rides running and the park functional for a company whose entire identity was built on one rule: the guest should never see the seams. The guest should never feel the machinery underneath it, never notice anything except that everything was exactly right. Boyd clocked out at dawn and went home to the garage. He later said, Disneyland changed him. The standard, the idea that perfection wasn't a goal you eventually reached. It was the floor you started from every single morning. He absorbed that completely. He carried it into every shop he ever ran, every build he ever approved, every person who ever worked for him. Boyd took the obsession. He left the rest behind, the part about keeping people, about managing what the standard costs the people underneath it, about building something that survives the man running it. By 1977, the night shift was history. He opened Hot Rods by Boyd in Stanton, California. His first major customer was a man named Vern Luce, whose 1933 coupe Boyd built into a car that won the Al Slonaker Award at the 1981 Oakland Roadster Show. In the custom car world, that was a statement, and people started paying attention. Then he built something that changed his name, and eventually cost him everything. The wheels that escaped him. Before Boyd, hot rod wheels were mostly seen as functional parts. They lasted and rarely became the center of the conversation. Working alongside machinist friend John Batera, Boyd started carving custom wheels from solid blocks of 6061 forged aluminum. Carved the way a sculptor works, except the tolerances were tighter than a human hair, and every edge landed exactly where it was calculated to land. The result had edges sharp enough to cast shadows, a surface depth that looked machined rather than made, and a finish that caught light the way jewelry does, not the way a car part does. When sunlight hit a set of Boyd's billet wheels, you felt it before you processed it. There was a precision to them that made everything nearby look slightly approximate. The nickname arrived on its own: Billet Boyd. In 1988, he founded Boyd's Wheels, Inc. to manufacture and sell them commercially. He went public. The company grew fast. And then the aesthetic started moving on its own, into territory Boyd never targeted. The look, machined aluminum catching light, geometric edges, the visual weight of something carved rather than formed, migrated into hip-hop culture, into music videos, into album covers, into the visual vocabulary of a generation of artists who had never attended a rod show and never would. A machinist from rural Idaho, building wheels in a California shop because they were the most precise, most beautiful things he could produce, accidentally became one of the people who shaped how money looked in 1990s rap videos. By the early 1990s, the billet rim aesthetic Boyd pioneered had become the visual language of custom cars in hip-hop videos, a world Boyd had never targeted and never particularly understood. But that same dynamic was already operating inside his shop, with people, not just products. In 1989, Billy Gibbons, the ZZ Top guitarist, called Boyd with a 1948 Cadillac and one instruction: make it something nobody has ever seen. What came out was Cadzilla. The body was stretched until every seam disappeared. The roofline dropped 4 inches. The proportions were rebuilt from scratch. In their history of hot rods and customs, the editors of Consumer Guide called it the first genuinely new type of custom car since the 1950s. It lives now at the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles. On that project, Boyd worked with designer Larry Erickson, who rendered the car's appearance based on a concept developed by Jack Chisenhall. Boyd held him to the standard, pushed him past what he thought he could do. Larry went on to become chief designer of the Ford Mustang and Thunderbird at Ford Motor Company. In multiple interviews and professional profiles, Erickson has specifically credited the Cadzilla collaboration as the project that launched his career. Larry's career was built inside Boyd's shop, and then the thing Boyd had built his shop on fell apart. The Asian market crashed in the late 1990s, and the company went with it. The same thing that made Boyd famous, the wheels, brought the whole structure down. When the inventory piled up and the money stopped coming, small suppliers across the industry got left holding over $5 million in unpaid bills. Boyd filed Chapter 11. He restarted operations under his son's name to sidestep the debts. And the man who had been running the company during all of it decided that going down with a ship he didn't sink wasn't loyalty. It was just damage. He packed up and left. His name was Chip Foose. He left with no money, a pregnant wife, and 8 years of skills that Boyd's shop had sharpened. What he did with those 8 years is where this story gets complicated. The school he never claimed. Chip arrived at Boyd's shop in 1990. He had grown up in Santa Barbara watching his father, Sam Foose, himself a respected bodyman, work metal with his hands. By 13, Chip had already painted his first car, a Porsche 356. He graduated from Art Center College of Design in Pasadena in 1990 and came to work for Boyd part-time. By 1993, when Ford came calling with a full-time offer, Boyd convinced him to stay. He did, and became the company president. Over 8 years at Hot Rods by Boyd, Chip worked his way from staff designer to company president. He designed the Boydster and the Boydster II, the cars that won Boyd's shop its first America's Most Beautiful Roadster award and became shorthand for what the Boyd look actually meant. Those cars, the ones that defined what people meant when they said the Boyd look, had Chip's hand in them. Boyd couldn't draw and had no formal design training. What he had was something harder to teach: the ability to walk into a room, look at a half-built car, and know with complete certainty what was wrong with it. He couldn't tell you in design language. He could tell you in the language of tolerances. This edge is off. This line doesn't resolve. This proportion isn't right. Chip translated that into sketches. The fabricators translated the sketches into metal. Boyd was the quality control that neither of them could be for themselves. When the company collapsed in 1998, Chip left. He and his wife, Lynn, started Foos Design in Huntington Beach, working out of a small space, taking whatever commissions came in, building a client list from scratch while a baby was on the way. 8 years of work, and it all had someone else's name on it. He built the new company on commissions, television work, and the reputation he'd spent 8 years earning inside Boyd's shop. Within a few years, Chip won the America's Most Beautiful Roadster Award at the Grand National Roadster Show, the same award Boyd had won more times than any builder in history. Boyd was the only back-to-back winner the show had ever seen. The AMBR was his territory. Then came Overhaulin' on TLC. It was warm, collaborative, built around the idea that great car building and human decency could occupy the same room. The ratings were strong, and Boyd's shop, rebuilt, rebranded, and running again out of a 50,000-square-foot facility in La Habra, was taking on expensive builds it couldn't always deliver on time, with staff that kept leaving, while the man it had trained was winning design awards and pulling bigger ratings on the same network. Boyd's people were watching, and some of them started making decisions about which side of that comparison they wanted to be on. So when the cameras arrived in 2004, and the whole country got a seat inside that shop, what did they actually see, and what was happening that no producer's cut could capture? The cameras and the collapse. American Hot Rod premiered on TLC in January 2004. 76 episodes across 5 seasons. Millions of people tuned in expecting to watch great cars being built. The show captured Boyd accurately in ways that were easy to film. The standard was brutal. The pressure was constant. His own son couldn't stay in that shop long term. The revolving door of staff played out week after week on camera. Boyd could reduce a skilled craftsman to silence with a look from across the floor, and he did it regularly, and the cameras caught all of it. What the cameras couldn't capture, what a producer's cut never leaves room for, was the Boyd that the people who actually knew him describe. A man who looked you straight in the eye, who told you exactly where you stood, who lit up visibly when a build was going right, when a problem got solved, when someone in the shop figured something out that nobody had figured out before. His intensity wasn't performance. Boyd genuinely could not look at something that wasn't right and let it pass, not because he was performing standards for the camera, but because the gap between what something was and what it needed to be was physically uncomfortable to him. In an interview with Street Machine Australia, Chip later said Boyd's on-camera rant at Charlie had elements of script writing. The confrontation was real. The shape of it wasn't entirely unmanageable. But the underlying thing was real. Charlie went to work with Chip anyway. Boyd told him not to come back. Mike Curtis, the machine shop supervisor, was found to have been designing motorcycle wheels for Chip on his own time. Boyd fired him. Every departure felt to Boyd like a vote against him. What he couldn't see, or wouldn't, was what those departures actually represented. Chip had been the company president. Charlie had been his painter for years. Mike had been running the machine shop. Jesse James had come up through those same doors. Larry Erickson had stood at a bench in that building and learned to see the way Boyd saw, then went and designed the Ford Mustang. Every single one of them left carrying something Boyd had built into them and built something with it. Boyd called that betrayal. Every one of his graduates called it a career. Then, October 6, 2004, the morning that had nothing to do with television. 22 agents from the California Department of Justice Fraud Division, the DMV, the California Highway Patrol, and the Department of Automotive Repair arrived at the La Habra shop with guns drawn and flak vests on. Employees showed up for their shift and walked into the middle of it. The building that had been on television, where celebrities dropped off cars worth $500,000, was being processed like a crime scene. The charge was title washing, obtaining out-of-state titles that registered Boyd's custom builds as much older vehicles, sidestepping California emissions requirements, and reducing registration fees. The case was filed in Sacramento County Superior Court. Prosecutors estimated 70,000 vehicles across California were registered the same way. Boyd was far from alone, but he was the biggest name on the list, which made him the most useful person to make an example of. He pleaded no contest on April 7, 2005. The court ordered 160 hours of community service, which he served by going around explaining to the hot rod community how to register cars legally, and $3,000 in restitution to the DMV. For a man whose cars sold for $500,000 apiece, it was less than a rounding error. The man who built his identity around precision and doing things to the exact standard was brought down not by a flaw in the work, but by the administrative machinery of a business that had outgrown his ability to manage it. The bankruptcy, the restart, the rivalry, the raid, the departures. Boyd had absorbed all of it without stopping, without slowing down, and without a body equipped to keep carrying the load. And Boyd's body had been keeping the bill quietly for a long time. The bill comes due December the 31st, 2007, New Year's Eve. Boyd Coddington was admitted to Presbyterian Intercommunity Hospital in Whittier, California. He was discharged shortly after, then readmitted a few days later when it became clear the problem wasn't resolving. The surgery was for a perforated colon. Under normal circumstances, in a healthy patient, that surgery is serious but survivable. Boyd was not that patient. He had been a long-term diabetic for years, a fact his publicist confirmed in the statement released after his death. Diabetes compromises the immune system and slows wound healing. In a body that had been running at full throttle for 30 years with no real slowdown, post-surgical infection wasn't just possible, it was likely. The disease had been accumulating damage quietly while Boyd kept moving, kept building, kept pushing, because stopping was not something Boyd knew how to do. His publicist released a statement. Boyd was expected to make a full recovery, but sepsis set in, and his kidneys followed. On February 27, 2008, at 6:20 in the morning, right around the time his crew would be arriving to open the La Habra shop, Boyd Coddington was gone. He was 63 years old, with a brand still running, a show still in reruns, and a building full of machines that would never quite work the same way again. When the memorial page went live on his website, the response was so immediate and so large that the server crashed completely. Funeral services were held March 5th at Our Lady of Guadalupe Catholic Church in La Habra, with a reception afterward at the shop itself. The same 50,000 square feet where Chip had run the design department, where Charlie had painted, where Jesse James had first learned the trade. 4 months later, on June 20th, 2008, Boyd Coddington Hot Rods closed for the last time. Without Boyd, the building was just a building. When he left, it left. But here is what didn't leave. Charlie won the Riddler Award, the exact prize Boyd told him he had no business chasing, and then opened Hutton Customs back in Idaho. Chip has since won the AMBR, the Riddler, and a spot in the Hot Rod Hall of Fame. Larry's Mustang is still one of the most recognized cars on American roads. Jesse James built a television career with Monster Garage on the Discovery Channel, which debuted in 2002 and ran for 5 seasons. The Boyd Coddington Wheels brand is still operating in 2026, 18 years after his death, with his son Chris running Hot Rods by Boyd and still making custom aluminum wheels to order. In every shop his people built, in every car they designed, in every standard they held, Boyd is still running, not as a memory, but as a method. Hot Rod Magazine's senior editor Gray Baskerville once called Boyd Coddington the Stradivarius of car building. Stradivari's real legacy isn't the instruments, it's that we still play them. Boyd's real legacy isn't the cars, it's the people who learned to build them. He managed every tolerance in metal to within 1,000th of an inch and applied 0 of that precision to managing himself, his health, his finances, or his understanding of what he was actually building. The man who could see the finished version of anything the moment it came through his shop door never once looked at the people who came through those same doors and understood what they would become. The shop is closed. He's been gone since February 2008. The standard he set is still the floor that everyone else works from. Not bad for a kid from Idaho who once traded his shotgun for a car. Did Boyd push talented people away, or did he push them hard enough to become great? And if he dodged millions in debt while calling others disloyal, does character matter, or is great work all that counts? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.